All right, this video goes over average rate of change. This is the beginning of Unit 2. So recall, we're going to talk about functions in this unit. A function is a graph or a set of ordered pairs in which the x values do not repeat. So the average rate of change of a function, average rate of change has the same meaning as slope. This is the slope formula that you guys learned last year, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Last year you guys were given 2 points and told to calculate the slope. The difference between last year and this year is going to be you're going to be given 2 x values, then you'll have to find their corresponding y values and then calculate the slope. So that's really going to be it. You're going to have that added step of calculating the y values. Usually you're going to be given an interval, so the interval will tell you the x values. So if you see interval notation like this, the starting x value that you're going to talk about is going to be the first one. This is indicated by the letter A. It's going to be a number for you if interval notation is used. And the ending x value is going to be indicated by whatever number goes here. And in this case, this is the letter B. So you're either going to have to read some information and decide what your starting and ending x values should be, or you're going to have to actually use an equation or a graph to figure out the values that you're going to use. So again, you are going to find the y values that correspond with the x values, and then you're going to calculate the average rate of change. You do have to know that the phrase average rate of change means slope. So here's an example on the bottom. From April through December of 2000, the stock price of QRS Company had a roller coaster ride. The chart below indicates the price of the stock at the beginning of each month during that period. Find the monthly average rate of change, so this is slope, in price between June, this is going to be one of our x values, put x1, and September. This is going to be x2. Now note, this did not use interval notation in this one, so it just depends on the problem. So let's find June on our table, and this is a really easy one to find the corresponding y value because it's given to us right on the table, and September. Now, to calculate average rate of change, we're going to need 2 y values and 2 x values. Instead of using the month name, I'm going to use the number for the month. So June is actually month 6, July is 7, August is 8, September is 9. So we're going to use the month numbers for these. So we really have the point June 88 is going to be 688. And then September 111 is really going to be 9/111. From last year, if you want to, you can label this x1, y1, x2, y2, and then you can substitute your numbers in. So first we're going to do y2, which is 111, minus y1, which is 88, over x2, which is 9, minus x1, which is 6. So I'm going to go to my calculator. All right, so my calculator, I'm going to make a fraction, control division, and then I'm going to just type that out. 111 minus 88, and then on the bottom, 9 minus 6. So 23 over 3. Now you can leave your slope as a fraction, like 23 over 3, or you can click menu, number, and option 1 will convert that to a decimal for you. So it's like 7.6 repeating. So this means that the price on average from June to September, it increased, since the slope was positive, by 7.6 dollars per month. All right, so here are all of the other options you could see. We're going to do another one where you have a table. Instead of having a word problem, though, we're going to have an interval. So first, again, we want to find the 2 points. It says find the average rate of change, which again means slope, of g of x over the interval -3 to 9. This is an interval. These are your x values. So we've got x1 and x2. So -3, I'm going to find that as an x value, which is right here. G of x, that's my y value. And then x2 is 9. So we've got the point -3, 8. And we have the point 9, 5. So we'll do x1, y1, x2, y2. So we're going to do y2 minus y1. y2 is 5 minus y1, which is 8, all over x2, which is 9, minus x1, which is -3. So we're going to do minus -3. Go to my calculator. So 5 minus 8 over 9 minus -3. -1/4. Now we don't have any context for this problem, like we don't know if it's dollars and months or what this table is representing, so I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, the next one says find the average rate of change of f of x, which is 4x squared over the interval -1 to 1. So again, the interval is telling you your x values. So that's telling us that x1 is -1 and x2 is +1. Now I don't have a table to look at to find my answers for the y's. So I'm just going to start setting up these points. -1 would be my first one, and 1 would be my second one. Okay, but I need to figure out the rest of this. I need to figure out the y values that go with this. But we have an equation, so I'm going to use the equation to find the y values. So first I'm going to plug in -1 to figure out what the y value is. So f of -1 would mean that I'm going to plug in -1 right here. 4 times -1 squared. So that's 4. So that means I have an x value of -1 and a y value of 4. And then I'm going to do the same thing for +1, since that's my other x value. I'm going to plug +1 in. Again, you're probably not going to need your calculator for this, but I'm going to show you anyway. So you'll plug that in, and you also get 4. This just happens to work out that they're both 4. That's not always going to happen, that they're going to be the same. But now you can calculate the slope. So you're going to do y2, which is 4, minus y1, which happens to also be 4, over x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is -1. The 4 minus 4 on the top is going to give you 0, so your whole answer is going to be 0. You could type this into your calculator if you really wanted to, but it's just going to tell you 0. So that means when you go from this point to this point, there's like no change in the y value. All right, the last option is if you have a graph. So find the average rate of change of the graph over the interval -3, 2. So again, these are our x values. So x1 would be -3 and x2 would be +2. So I've got negative 3 as one of my points, and positive 2 will start my other point. So I go to my graph, I'm going to go over to negative 3, and I'll follow it up until I find the point. Negative 3 is at 5, so y1 will be 5. I'm going to go over to 2 on my graph, and 2 is just at 0. So now I'm going to do the slope. y2, which is 0, minus y1, which is 5, over x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is negative 3. Control division, so I'll have 0 minus 5, and then 2 minus negative 3. So negative 1 for our final answer. All right, so on every one of these questions, they gave you a set of x values, and then you had to find the y values either from a table, from an equation by plugging them in, or from the graph. All right, so the next page is going to be our last page. It says, which of the following functions has the greatest average rate of change on the interval negative 3 to 0? This is a great question that's very similar to what you would see on the Regents, where you have to compare two functions. Notice one of them is labeled g of x and the other one is labeled f of x. So it's going to be two different slopes that we're going to calculate, and we're going to find which one has the greatest answer. All right, the interval is negative 3 to 0. So again, these are our x values, x1 and x2. So let's do the table first. I'll call it g of x, which is the table. So negative 3 for our x value would be this point, and then 0 for our x value would be this point. So g of x has the points negative 3, negative 4, and 0, 2. This is our x1, y1, x2, y2. So we're going to do y2, which is 2, minus y1, which is negative 4, over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is negative 3. Oops. Two minus negative 4, which is 6, and then 0 minus negative 3, which is 3. 6 over 3 is 2. So we get 2 for the first answer. Now, when it's asking us to compare, we've got to do it again. Okay, now we're going to do the slope for f of x, and f of x is the equation. These bars are absolute value bars. On your calculator, all you have to do is type the letters ABS, and then use a set of parentheses, and that will change this to absolute value. Okay, all right, so for f of x, we need to figure out the points. I'm going to do most of this work on my calculator, but I know the points, the x values of the points should be negative 3 and 0. For the y values, since I have an equation, I'm going to plug them in. So I'm going to plug in x equals negative 3 and x equals 0. That's how I'm going to get my y values, but I'm just going to do this on my calculator. So first, I'll plug in negative 3. So again, to make the absolute value bars pop up, I'm just going to type the letters down here. I'm going to type in A, B, S, and then a set of parentheses. Okay, that's going to convert this into absolute value. Now I'm going to do 2. I'm going to replace that x, so parentheses, with a negative 3. Close that set of parentheses, then plus 1. Now, outside of the absolute value stops. So I'm going to arrow out of the parentheses that I have, and then a minus 3. When I hit enter, this is going to change into the bars that you see. See how it changed? That's absolute value. So our answer is 2. So that tells us that when we plugged in -3, we got an answer of 2. That's one of our points. Plugged in -3, got an answer of 2. Now we're going to do that again. Now if you want to, you can just go up to what you had just typed in, copy it, and everywhere we had put that -3, we're going to change that into a 0, because that was our second point right here. So if we plug in 0, we're going to get -2. And now we have our point, x1, y1, x2, y2. So we're going to do y2, which is -2, minus y1, which is 2, over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is -3. Control division, -2 minus 2, which is -4, 0 minus -3, which is +3. We have -4/3. So over the interval -3 to 0, which one has a greater average rate of change? G of x, which has an average rate of change of 2, or f of x with an average rate of change of -4/3. So we know that 2 is greater than -4/3, so I'm going to write the answer up here. G of x has a greater average, I'm going to abbreviate, rate of change. All right, number 2 says the Jameson family kept a log of the distance they traveled during a trip as represented in the graph below. Was their average rate of change between hours 2 and 4 greater than, less than, or equal to their average rate of change between hours 6 and 8? So again, we're going to do 2 average rate of changes, and we're going to compare our answers. So first we're going to do between the hours of 2 and 4. So here's 2. 2 is at 110, and 4 is at 180. x1, y1, x2, y2. So we'll do y2, which is 180, minus y1, which is 110, all over x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is 2. Oops. So 180 minus 110 over 4 minus 2, so 35. Now we're going to do between hours 6 and 8. So 6 is at 2:30, and 8 is at 3:50. x1, y1, x2, y2. So we're going to do y2, which is 350, minus y1, which is 230, over x2, which is 8, minus x1, which is 6. So 350 minus 230 over 8 minus 6, 60. So the question was their average rate of change between hours 2 and 4, was this greater than, less than, or equal to their average rate from between hours 6 and 8? So this is less than this. It was less than the average rate of change between hours 6 and 8. All right, so it, meaning this. So this 35 was less than the average rate of change between hours 6 and 8, which is this.